Oh, Joe, I'm delighted to be speaking with a fellow writer, the editor of the Push and 5 magazines. Sorry, 5 Managers fanzine. Myself and Steve Evans here.
All right, Joe, how are you doing?
Yeah,
Good to
good. Thank you for both of you, Terry, Steve, having me on. I'm looking forward to this. It should be good.
Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully,
should
hopefully.
be. Hopefully. So Joe, where are you based? I'm assuming you're in London because your link on your Twitter profile mentions East London Press, and
Yeah.
I've read you're a West Ham supporter, so I'm guessing you're a London East Ender.
Well, so East London Press were my first publisher, and they've been brilliant to me. Originally based in Bethnal Green. I grew up as a youngster in Essex. Yep. That's why I became a
Oh
West
yeah.
Ham supporter. If I'd grown up in where I live now, which is west of London, I'd probably been, well, I don't even want to tell you who it might have been, right? But and my brother's lived in East London. He's my younger brother, probably about 30 years. He's been certainly in Walthamstow for 20 years. He's a West Ham fan as well. He's not far from the London Stadium. So, yeah, no, we're not an East End family. We moved to Essex when I was very, very young in 68. The first games I went to were Chelmsford City. That's where I lived, which was brilliant. So they played their games on New Riddle Street next to the Exeter cricket ground, which is still there. But they've moved their ground out of town. It looks horrendous now. But they were my first games. And then West Ham were the nearest big club down the A12. Yeah. So it was just, there's lots of stories about how I become West Ham. I won't bore you with them, but there is, yeah. And I from the age of 6, been West Ham.
Okay.
I say there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, my local team's Tranmere, but I wasn't brought up with Tranmere Rovers. I was brought up with Liverpool, even
Same
though
here.
Tranmere was the
Do
closest
you know what?
one. You know,
I've
just
got
the
I've
way
got
it
a new
is.
boss. I won't change. He is from the Wirral and he's a Tranmere Rovers supporter. Right. I'm going to send him this.
Nice one.
And
Nice one.
we have these Zoom chats because he's my manager, and we often
Yeah.
talk about Tranmere Rovers and West Ham. But anyway, moving on.
Okay.
No, actually, I do get to the odd Tranmere game as it happens. Not very many, but I do.
But I
I
just want to
follow
just.
them as well.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you know back in the early 80s, there's a band called Half Man Half Biscuit.
Yeah.
Okay, and because Tram used to play their games on a Friday night because
Yeah.
of Liverpool clashing at home, because one of them would be at home, they were offered an opportunity to play on the Tube, and they turned it down, saying Tram were at home that night. They didn't go. They didn't play. It's a true story. That's so admirable that a band would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dedication.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. Joe, I've read your book, Lone Moor Road. I thought
Yeah.
it was brilliant.
Thank
Roll
you.
Galloway, he's kindly sent me a copy of the book, but we'll get
Mm,
on to that shortly. But before
okay.
that, tell us more about the fanzine Push and 5 magazines. Sorry, 5 managers.
Yeah. So I got to know a lot of people and set up a Twitter account, Joe England Books, because I thought I was going to be a book publisher to begin with.
Oh.
Really, I did. Right. And then I realized how much it cost. So I went to fanzines. I was very lucky that I knew that I had some good group of people that wrote really well that weren't being published. And it started off as a very raw fanzine and became a magazine. There were 23 issues in 3.5 years. I interviewed the likes of John King, Joel Wobble, Roddy Daw was in it, Dave Peace was in it. They were interviewed by Ian Cusack.
Wow.
I interviewed Linton Kwesi Johnson, Thurston Moore, Matt Johnson out of the Youth Out of Killing Joke, and I can't remember all the others. Right,
Yeah.
but it
Wow.
just imploded. You know, it went into overdrive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it got to issue 23, I realized, like you just think if I just carry on, it's not going to. I tried to change every issue to make it a little bit different, and I just thought 23 was there's a thing called 23 skidoo, I think it's called, right? It's 23 is like a big number, but I just thought that's the end of it. And 5 Managers came out in the last season at Upton Park, because I was doing Push and I was selling Push at West Ham, and because it had gone, it really had progressed into a really good magazine. Yeah, card cover, color, really good print. I had a great printer. £2 for like 80 pages or 90
That's,
pages,
that's a bargain, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they said run a fanzine for the last season at Upton Park. And I always believe in you've got to have a name. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Push is called Push, but we'll expand on that out of this call because it's got
Okay.
personal reasons.
Okay.
The 5 managers came to me straight away because between 1902 and 1989, West Ham only had 5 managers: Sid
Wow.
King, Charlie Painter,
That's a record, that isn't it? Must be.
Ted Fenton, Ron Greenwood, and John Lyon between 1902 and 1989. So I was always obsessed, even when after John Lyon was sacked in '89, about the 5 managers. Yeah.
Chelsea have had that in one weekend, haven't they? I think.
Yeah, and we've had about 26 managers since John Lyle went. You know, but I'm not going to run a magazine called 26 Managers. But I called it 5 Managers, and it had a kind of like it connected with a lot of people of a certain age group. Yep. And it was about not the Premier League. It was the last season at Upton Park. It wasn't about the Premier League. It was about the history of the people that contributed, about from when they went from a kid to going to Upton Park. I interviewed the likes of Frank Lampard Sr, who's in issue 1, a childhood hero of mine. Mark Ward, you may know Mark Ward,
yeah,
right? He was very supportive. He wrote an intro to the book, introduced me to Frank McAvenny, went to the last issue. There was also interviews with Johnny Sissons, who was in the 1964 Cup final. Him and Harold Kendall were the 2 youngest players to play in the Cup final. I think they're both 17. So, and I got to know Johnny Sissons because I worked with his sister at Marks and Spencer, and she said I'd get an interview with my brother.
Nice one.
So she said, "Are you doing this magazine about West Ham?" Kind of. I said, "Yes." I think my brother wants to be in it, or something like that, you know. And I went, "Oh, Johnny Sissons, yeah, that." So that run for the last season, that was its only purpose. And both magazines closed in 2016. They'd run their course, for different reasons. And so that's what. So what I did with Push, which I'm really proud of, and John King, the author John King, and I didn't realize at the time, he said it to me a while back. He said, "I don't think you realize the platform you gave to a lot of unpublished writers." Yeah. And a lot of them have gone on to do great things, but they were all really important to me. A lot of what I realized about, I want to say if it's desperate writers, but writers keen to be published. I got a lot of submissions from people that had never read Push. Because I'd say, have you ever read an issue? Because even though the writing was good, it didn't fit in with the theme of the mag. You had to have a certain style about your writing that fitted, because otherwise it didn't work. I probably turned down a Booker Prize winner.
Yeah. Everyone says, every publisher though. I mean, how long did it take J.K. Rowling? Rejected so many times before Harry Potter was, It happens.
The rejection process is heartbreaking. You have to keep going. There are so many great writers that will tell you that they've had 30 rejections. Before someone took them on.
It's happened to me, Joe. I got fed up. I can wallpaper the room with my rejection letters, but I've finally been taken up by a new publisher.
That's probably not good for your mental health. Wallpapering your room.
Well, I packed it up.
Letters.
I packed it in. I thought, right, I'm going to self-publish, and I did self-published. And luckily enough, recently, Luna Eden, new publishing house, that they're going to launch with my novel, my Tales from the Green Hills novel. So I know the heartbreak and the effect it has on you. But just to get back to our main focus, Lone Moor Road, tell us all about this. The way I read this, the authenticity shone through. It was like a diary effect. The way I read it, you've actually been to this place. You're not just sort of sitting on looking out the window daydreaming. It read to me like you've been there and you've done those things that happened in the book.
I think we talked before this about where you said it read like a memoir.
Yeah.
So the background to it is that I don't want to mention my mum's health condition, but it's not in a good place. But we went to see the Kenneth Branagh film Belfast when it came out.
Yeah.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
With me, my sister, and my dad. My brother's obviously in East London. He wasn't coming over just to watch a film. Bless him. That's not knocking him. Why would he? But when we were walking down the stairs, because we were right at the back cinema, and I was with my mum, she's got really nimble feet, and I said to her, "Did you enjoy that, Mum?" And she said, "Yeah." "What was it called?" And I said, "Belfast." She went, "It should have been called Derry." We went for this meal in a pub around the corner, and all I'm thinking is, I'm going to write this story for Mum, about Derry, and because we're having a meal. And I don't take notepads out, but I'm just thinking. And as soon as I got in, I plotted it. And in fact, I wrote the first chapter. So a lot of it is Jenny Doherty, who runs Little Acorns Bookshop, where we did the Derry launch,
Yeah.
she wrote the best. I mean, there's two good blurbs on the back of the book. She said, "This is a fact fiction story." I thought perfect, because it is. It's fact fiction.
Yeah.
So if we take, I don't want to go into too much, but if we take the opening chapter, "This is our stop," that's based on actual fact.
Okay.
And when people say to me, "Well, how can you?" So it's based on rhyme, but it's written. I created rhyme. But when people have said to me, "Well, how can you remember that if when you were that young?" Well, I can tell you, if you think you're just going on a holiday and you arrive in the middle of the Troubles, you don't forget that.
Yeah, true. That's
You don't
living your
forget
memory
it.
there.
Every detail, not every detail, but you remember so much. So it's quite easy to write, because once I set the tone, and and just to let you know, when I was creating the name, I moved all the characters in it are actually family names. I just moved them around. Yeah. So my mum's Mary, but she became Auntie Mary. Etc. Just moved it around just to give me that kind of that real kind of feel. But because it's set in 1973, going back to football, the top scorer in the first division was Brian Robson.
Oh, yeah.
Scored 28 goals. And I just knocked the B off and called him Ryan Robson.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wonder why it rang a bell. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a lot of it is based on a memoir, I suppose you could call it. Yeah. But I had to kind of change certain scenes to give it a continuity, because it wouldn't have worked otherwise. So there's certain scenes in part one, which to me is the most important part, Ryan's story in 1973. But you've read it, but the playground scene also is very true. That actually happened.
Okay.
But there are other scenes that not necessarily happen. So, for instance, some of the situations and the landscape that I created, I changed. Like on Lone Moor Road, I created a different Lone Moor Road.
This is an actual road on Derry. I looked at it on the map previously.
I always say it's like the way that the River Thames dissects North and South London. Lone Moor Road dissects Bogside, Brandywell, and Craiggin. Because it goes right the way through the heart of that community. So it was always been really important to call it that, to me anyway. And my mum's house, Limewood Street, it just goes off Limewood, off Lone Moor Road. So there's so much about Lone Moor Road. And when I was out there, what was really amazing was how so much hadn't changed. Right, not so much in the upper part of Lone Moor Road, but in the back. So all the terraces go down on a really steep slope. And at the bottom, nothing's changed.
There's still murals on the walls there.
I went
there about 8 years ago.
But at the bottom of the Bogside, where the Battle of the Bogside was, Free Derry Corner, that's all been. I'll use the term gentrified. It's been to make it appealing. Well, no, not to make. I'm using the wrong words here. To make it appealing to tourists, but it's nothing like it was, in 68, 70, 71, 72, and 73 when I went out there. But the upper part of the Bogside hasn't changed really. A lot of it has, but the lower part, the bottom of my mum's road, if you go down that bottom of that road and walk all the way up to the Celtic Bar, I don't recall that being any different to when I was there in 73.
Since you mentioned it, are you planning a follow-up on this Lone Moor Road?
Well,
maybe a part two, or
no, because I think there was a part two in it, because Ryan goes back there 50 years later in part two as a successful author. He's at his first, and he goes out there to do a book launch. So kind of part two is in Lone Moor Road already. I don't think I can reuse it. Yeah. And I thought when I wrote it, it was I'd still kind of, when you write things, I thought, have I got the authority to recount that when I've never lived there? But I had a lot of support from people saying, but your mum and all her family came from there, you've been out there. A year after Bloody Sunday, I was out there. I didn't know this at the time. It was, and I'll be honest, it changed my life, right? So it didn't, not immediately, But many years later, when I really got to understand Irish history in greater detail as I got older, because I learnt nothing at school, I left with nothing. Right, I taught myself history, but not just by reading one book, but you have to look at all sides. You know, because if you don't, you'll never get the right picture of a situation, of a conflict, if you just take one side's point of view. And that still goes on to this day, and which I do. You have to look at, why are there conflicts, and why these people are against these people, what, you know, and what is the complexities of that, without going into too much detail. So I kind of like really want to understand the troubles, but in my 20s, not when I came back, but a lot of, like you said, a memoir, a lot of what I recounted in Ryan's story in part 1 is based on a very vivid memory.
Okay.
You've had a couple of other books published as well. Hudson, Lamb is Innocent, and Roadside Picnics. They were before Lone Moor. So tell us a bit about them. Yeah,
well, funny enough, well, it is funny enough, Hudson Lamb, there's 9 characters in it, and Hudson's one of them. He talks about going to the Wirral.
Wow.
He does, right? And to Port Sunlight. He got off at Port Sunlight train station.
Oh my word.
He went under the River Mersey, and there's a reason for that in the story. But when I started Push, I used to contribute to kind of, as I call it, beef up the numbers. And then I didn't need to. When the interview started, I didn't need to write anything. But I wrote these 3 short stories that I knew could be expanded, into a novel. And some of the characters' names changed. I think Hudson Lamb's name in Push was Matthew, and that didn't work for me. But yeah, Hudson's story is based in that. It's the longest chapter, and it's based in Port Sunlight.
I used to live a mile away
to find out what, you know. But it all connects. So I've got, like, I think there's 9 narrators. So to me, it's the best thing I've done. I mean, Lone Moor Road's very personal, I think because it's Hudson Lamb was my first novel, and because I really tried to write from different points of view, different characters, and write in their voice, to me it's the best thing I've done. And then I wrote Roadside Picnics, which is all one person, Tim Browning, with a lot of colourful characters around him. And I think Hudson Lamb's like about 230 pages, Roadside Picnics about 430 pages, or, you know, and then Lone Moor Road's 80 pages. It wasn't always 80 pages, but I just trimmed it down because I wanted someone to read it like they went out to see a play.
Oh yeah. It's a good. You can read that in one sitting. I did. I sat there and read it for a couple of hours, one go.
So, you know, I'd like to think part 1 could be a radio play. I don't know about a visual play, but it could be a radio play.
Radio drama. But
so I'm really pushing on that.
That would work in my mind. Yeah, but Joe, can I just go off on a tangent again? Go back to the fanzines. Can I ask you, how do people get in touch with you? How do they contribute to the fanzine and get their work published?
So just to illustrate with the fanzines, they both folded in 2016.
Sorry. Yeah.
Right. They both folded in the same year. So Push started in 2013, 26 issues, 23 issues, sorry. 5MANAGERS started in 2015. There was 5 issues in total. And that's when I started writing for myself.
Right. No chance of another setting up a new fanzine, maybe?
Well,
or was that done? That in the background now?
Some people have said you need to start a West Ham fanzine, but at the London Stadium, there's not the same selling options as you had at Upton Park. It's just not going to work. But what I will tell you is, so how could someone contribute to new writers, poets, or have their photographers, etc. I'm going to name you 4 really good fanzines that are out there, magazines, fanzines, and I'm wearing one of them. It's called Razor Cuts. So Razor Cuts is based in Falkirk in Scotland. These 4 are all completely different magazines as well. Razor Cuts, based in Falkirk, run by Dell, and he's done a fantastic job. And they've now broadened out into publishing books. So they're really doing well. So you've got Razor Cuts, you've got Spinners, obviously. I don't know if you've seen any of Rule Spinners magazines.
It rings
brilliant.
a bell. Yeah.
They've actually got a spine on them. Yeah, they've got a spine.
On a magazine. That's unusual.
And then you've got Mike Head's Tangled Lines. Now, Mike's very much sort of old school. They look like photocopied, like you've done in school, and they're stapled. But there's something incredibly charming about what he's doing, and it's really good. His first issue, he had an interview with John King, the author John King. So and he's interviewed the author Kathy Unsworth. He's just doing a brilliant job. I love the name Tangled Lines, by the way. I think everything's about the name. So you've got Tangled Lines, look them up. And then you've got Paper and Ink, Martin Appleby's fanzine. Again, he's kind of like got a sort of a punk ethic towards it. But these are all points where you might get your first work published. So the 4 that I mentioned. Okay. And then, so when I was publishing people in Push, they've gone on to have novels published and short stories published. You get that confidence. Yeah.
You give them the chance,
don't you?
Yeah, it's so difficult. We talk to that many writers, and it's almost impossible for them to connect with a traditional publisher, especially someone with a working class story. Yeah.
The mainstream is, when I first interviewed John King, for the Football Factory, it was my second big interview in Push. He said, there's no way that any mainstream publishing house will take on the Football Factory or Irvine Welsh's Train Spotting now. They wouldn't accept it. They were very lucky that they had a guy, an editor at Random House called Robert Robinson, who took them on. You haven't got any Robert Robinson. I'm sure I got his name right, by the way. I don't think there's any Robert Robinsons anymore out there, So, their lives would be, if you look at Irvine's success and John's success, they both published, I think John's done 12 novels. I've lost count of Irvine's. Not that far ahead.
Both brilliant writers.
Yeah. And they are what I would call proper writers. I don't call myself a proper writer. I write, but the way that they write, the detail and the commitment and time that they spend on their writing, you can tell when you read it.
Yeah, the quality shines through.
Yeah. Speaking of Irvine Welsh, how did you manage to get a picture in his company?
So that was. Do you know what? I've been meaning to take that down. That was 2017. Yeah. And what it was, I met Irvine through a friend of mine called Grant Fleming, who used to be a photographer for Primal Screen in their heyday.
He
said that Irvine's doing a reading in Mile End. He was in the big issue doing a story written about Begbie. And he introduced me to Irvine, and we've been friends ever since. So when that was in Chicago, I went out to America for 2 weeks to see my mate Nige. And Irvine said, well, we've got to meet up. We were going to go to a baseball game, but there was a thunderstorm at 6 p.m. And we met up in this local bar. And I'll give you a little insight into what Irvine's like. So I was with my mate Nige, his son and his mate. And when Irvine came in, he's really friendly, got on with everybody. And it was a small bar, a lovely bar. There was a pool table at the front with a board over it. We were about to order some food. We just got some drinks in. And Irvine said, you all want a drink? We said, well, we just got them in. He said, you lot hungry? I said, we're going to order in a minute. And he went, I'll order. He filled the whole of the top of the pool table with food. And he talked about every dish, what it was. That's true, right? That's what and I've been friends with him for quite a while now. I went to his wedding. In Brighton on the hottest day. The cabbie taking me. I stayed on Brighton seafront. The wedding, I believe, was in Hove. Cabbie said it's 36 degrees outside the car. Good job I got in not central heating. I've got
aircon. Got a radiator in the cab.
But I got invited to his wedding. There was a lot of people there, and he took me round and invited me to everyone. It was like your auntie being taken round.
Oh, okay.
This is my son, and going, I'm never going to remember all their names. Irvine took me around to everyone, and that's how lovely he is, And the only games I went to West Ham last season, because I don't like the London Stadium that much, was with Irvine as his guest.
Wow.
Me,
That's brilliant. That really is brilliant.
And, it's because at his wedding, what was really nice, I talked to a few of his friends from Leith, and that came down, and they said, he's never changed.
Yeah. Even with that fame.
he said he's still the same person as he's always been. And if the endorsement can't come from his closest friends, then no one can ever judge, you know. And with Cosmo, which is a bit of a mad story, I got an email out of the blue from Cosmo saying, I've got a Man United fan who runs a fanzine who said that you're running a West Ham fanzine. Now, it was pushed, but I did sell it at West Ham. I said, it's not a West Ham fanzine because Cosmo's West Ham. I knew Cosmo from Ian Dury and The Clash, etc. And we did an interview. And then also when I was out on that trip to the States, we went to, a few days later after the meet with Irvine, we went to New York and we met Cosmo. We arranged to meet him in an Irish bar just off Central Park, where he said Joe Strum always came to. Really narrow little bar, really kind of like, yeah, probably hasn't changed in 50 years. You know what I mean? But I got a little bit drunk and I wound Cosmo up because I kept playing tracks of London Calling.
Brilliant memories.
He did tell some fantastic stories that night about, especially the album Do It Yourself. They broke into the Melody Maker office,
magazine,
Melody Maker, the paper, and they posted wallpaper all over computers. If they had computers, or typewriters, they absolutely vandalised it. And obviously, Melody Maker weren't happy, but they said that was our promo, and I think that was Ian's idea. I don't think he did it, but he got everyone out. They managed to get in, and they just pasted all this wallpaper all over their office and over everything.
that's crazy.
One book. This is the 5 Managers book.
Okay.
Right? You know what I said about the 5 managers? We only have 5 managers.
Is that the managers?
Yeah, that is them. Okay. Ted Fenton, Ron Greenwood, Charlie Painter, Sid King, and John Lyle. Now that was done by a friend of mine called Andy Halford. Okay.
It's a cracking photograph, that cracking picture.
And it was on issue 3, so that was the book. And Andy Halford was also good friends with Cosmo's. And when Cosmo came up, and Andy does all this brilliant woodcut art. West Ham. He made a massive West Ham shield for Cosmo because Cosmo's West Ham.
I've got 2 questions really, but I was going to ask, what are you working on another novel now?
I think I'm a novella writer now. I don't think I'm going to write a full-length novel again because I work from home on a laptop.
Shorter ones.
Yeah, because I work from home on a laptop, and you don't really want to go onto a laptop in the evening, so you do it at weekends.
You
know, but I'm doing a follow-up to Hudson Lamb, which is going to be a novella. It's called Don't Worry About It. And it's already, the early chapters are written. It's sort of a revenge novel. And if you read Hudson Lamb, it's just one character, Jordan. He's the youngest character in book 1. And yeah, it's around that. But it's because when you work from home, you don't really, when I didn't work from home, it's easy to come home and just sign in on your laptop and work for a couple of hours.
Change the scenery.
But when you're working from home, you don't really want to fire up your laptop and do any writing. You want to just spread. I was never a TV person until I got an Android TV and Netflix and Prime Video and all that. So you get lazy, don't you?
Yeah.
At the same time, you see some good things, you know.
Okay.
But, so yeah, I am working on that. I want to get the first draft done before the end of the year.
What advice would you give to a new writer starting out in the business?
I'm not really in a position to give advice, but what I'd say is, because I know how difficult it is, whether you're in a band trying to make it, or in films trying to make it, or or any kind of creative art trying to make it, it's probably harder now than ever. Or was it ever easy?
Yeah,
I don't know.
True.
But what I'd say is, you just got to keep writing. First and foremost, keep writing. And if you're writing a novel, send sections off the short stories. Look at some chapters, think, would that work as short, and send it to some of the publications that I've said. Because that little bit of confidence. And also, if you're then trying to promote yourself, you can say, I've been publishing this, this, and this. So really, it's just about keep writing. The key is keep writing and keep editing, and don't be precious about it. Don't be precious about cutting things out. Just read it. And the other advice I'd give is that when you read it back as a reader, because you can already see the scenes in your head. So just sort of step back, leave it alone for a while, and then pick it up and read it as if you're someone else reading it, and would they understand it?
Yeah.
What you're saying?
That-
Would they the dialogue and the scene you're depicting? Would they get it, or do you need to do some more work on it?
That's brilliant advice.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Lovely talking to you both. Hopefully, I've made some semblance of sense.
A lot of sense. A lot of sense. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you. But for now, Joe, let's I'll say goodbye and enjoy your weekend.
Yeah,
absolutely. Keep in touch, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Both of you. Thank you very much.
Joe.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers. Pleasure. Yeah.